I came back from my trip to find my belongings dumped in the garden. A note from my daughter coldly stated there was no room left for me. No argument, no tears, just exile in silence. But that note marked the end of their control and the start of my freedom. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise that this will be the best story you will hear in your life. Eleanor Richards stood frozen at the gate of what had been her home for 38 years. Her suitcase still clutched in one hand, she blinked slowly, certain her eyes were deceiving her. Clothes, books, photo albums, and kitchenware lay scattered across the front lawn like remnants of a hasty yard sale. The late September sun cast long shadows across her belongings, making the scene even more surreal. "What on earth?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustling of autumn leaves. As she stepped closer, the crunch of paper beneath her foot made her pause. A hastily scrawled note, partially dampened by morning dew, delivered the blow with brutal efficiency. "Mum, there's no more room for you here. My in-laws needed a place to stay. Your things are outside. The apartment keys are under the flower pot." Eleanor, a retired English teacher at 67, had only been gone for 5 days, a short trip to visit her college roommate in Vermont. She'd left the house spotless, her room in perfect order just as she always did. Now 38 years of memories lay exposed on the lawn for all the neighborhood to see. A movement caught her attention as Marge, her neighbor of 15 years, approached hesitantly from across the street. "Eleanor, I just saw you pull up." Marge's voice trailed off as she took in the scene. "Oh my God, I had no idea they would do this today. I thought they'd wait until you were home at least." The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. "You knew?" Marge's face flushed with shame. "They've been moving furniture around for days. I saw Michael and Diane bringing her parents' things in yesterday. I tried calling you, but my phone died during the trip," Eleanor said mechanically, still processing. "I didn't have my charger." A small crowd of neighbors had begun to gather at a distance, pretending not to stare. Some whispered to each other. Some quickly looked away. When Eleanor's eyes met theirs, they all knew. Everyone knew except her. With measured movements that belied the storm raging inside her, Eleanor began collecting her belongings. No tears fell. No accusations were hurled at the house that had been her home, since her husband Robert had carried her across the threshold as newlyweds. The house she had paid off with her teaching salary after Robert's illness took him when Michael was only 15. "Let me help you," Marge offered, already bending to gather scattered books. Within an hour, Eleanor's possessions were loaded into Marge's SUV and Eleanor's compact car. The piles had seemed massive spread across the lawn, but looked pitifully small once packed away. A life reduced to what could fit in 2 vehicles. "You can stay with us tonight," Marge insisted. "Frank won't mind." "No," Eleanor said softly but firmly. "Thank you, but I have somewhere to go." 5 years earlier, against everyone's advice, Eleanor had used part of her retirement savings to purchase a small condo downtown. "It's an investment," she had told Michael when he questioned her decision. In truth, it had been a whisper of intuition, a quiet voice urging her to secure something of her own. The 1-bedroom apartment in an older building wasn't fancy, but it was hers. She'd rented it out since the purchase, using the income to offset the mortgage. The current tenant had moved out just 3 weeks ago, and Eleanor had been debating what to do with the property. Now, the universe had answered for her. As she unlocked the door to the empty apartment, memories flooded back. After Robert passed, she had devoted herself entirely to raising Michael. Every decision, every sacrifice had been for him. When he married Diane 7 years ago, Eleanor had happily offered them her home. "I'll need the space when you have children," she had told them, moving her things to the smallest bedroom. At first, the arrangement worked beautifully. Eleanor cooked meals, helped with household chores, and eventually became a doting grandmother to twins Emma and Ethan. But something had shifted over the past 2 years. Small criticisms began about her cooking, her cleaning methods, the way she spoke to the children. "Mom, Diane thinks it's better if we handle the kids' bedtime routine," Michael had said one evening. "She says your stories get them too excited to sleep." Eleanor had nodded and stepped back. Then came more restrictions. Don't pick the children up from school. Don't feed them certain foods. Don't interfere with Diane's parenting methods. Each new limitation was presented as reasonable, necessary, and temporary. But they were never lifted. When she fell ill with pneumonia last winter, barely anyone checked on her. She spent 3 weeks in her bedroom, preparing her own meals when she could stand, watching through the window as life continued without her. Michael brought her medicine, but his visits were brief, awkward, distracted. The empty apartment echoed with her footsteps as Eleanor moved from room to room. A thin layer of dust covered the countertops. The beige walls needed painting. The carpet had seen better days. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "The kids are asking about you. Hope you understand this is for the best. Diane's parents needed our help." Eleanor set the phone down without responding. The message confirmed what she already knew. She had been replaced, deemed dispensable by her own son. The twins would be told some sanitized version of events. Perhaps they'd be led to believe she had chosen to leave. As evening settled over the apartment, Eleanor unpacked a small bag containing essentials: toiletries, medication, a nightgown, and a change of clothes. Everything else remained in the car. There was nowhere to put it yet. She made a makeshift bed from the coat she'd been wearing and her travel pillow. Lying in the empty room, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of downtown traffic, Eleanor felt something unexpected stirring within her. Not just grief or betrayal, but a flicker of something that felt surprisingly like freedom. For the first time in decades, she was answerable to no one. No one's needs came before hers. No one's opinions would shape her decisions. "I'm starting over at 67, she whispered to the empty room, testing the words. They sounded both terrifying and exhilarating. Tomorrow would bring practical concerns, furniture, utilities, legal matters about the house. But tonight, in this empty space that belonged entirely to her, Eleanor allowed herself to imagine possibilities that had been unthinkable just 12 hours earlier. Just before she drifted off to sleep, her phone lit up with another text. Not from Michael this time, but from Emma, her 8-year-old granddaughter, sent from Diane's tablet. "Grandma, where did you go? Dad says you moved away. When are you coming back?" Eleanor woke to sunlight streaming through bare windows. For a moment, disorientation gripped her before reality came rushing back. The hardwood floor beneath her makeshift bedding, the empty apartment, the scattered belongings in her car, yesterday's betrayal. She reached for her phone, reading Emma's message again. Her fingers hovered over the screen, composing and deleting several responses before settling on, "I'm at my downtown apartment, sweetheart. I didn't move away from you, just to a different house. I'll always be your grandma." After pressing send, she added, "I love you," then immediately wondered if the message would even reach Emma. Would Diane intercept it? Delete it? Tell Emma that Grandma was too busy for visits now? Eleanor forced herself to stand, wincing at the stiffness in her joints. First things first, she needed coffee, food, and a plan. The corner cafe provided the first two, and as she sipped her coffee at a small outdoor table, she began working on the third, making lists in a small notebook. "Eleanor Richards?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see a woman about her age with cropped silver hair and bright blue eyes. "I thought that was you. It's been ages." Recognition dawned slowly. Susan Parker, from the school board meetings? Susan nodded enthusiastically. "I retired from teaching 3 years ago. What brings you downtown, just visiting?" Eleanor hesitated only briefly before deciding that pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Actually, I'm living here now, as of yesterday." Over the next hour, Eleanor found herself sharing the condensed version of her situation with Susan, who listened with increasing indignation. "They just put your things outside? Without warning? That's not just cruel, Eleanor, that's illegal. It's your house." "Technically, yes," Eleanor admitted, "but Michael's name is on it too. I added him to the deed when he got married." Susan's expression darkened. I'd still talk to a lawyer, and in the meantime, what are you going to do about furniture? Basic necessities. By noon, Eleanor had acquired a new ally. Susan, it turned out, volunteered at a community center that helped seniors in transition. By the end of the day, Eleanor's apartment contained a donated bed, a small dining table, with 2 chairs, basic kitchen supplies, and a comfortable used armchair. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The senior center has a legal aid clinic on Thursdays, Susan told her. I'll pick you up at 9. For the first time since seeing her belongings on the lawn, Eleanor felt something like hope. The apartment was starting to look habitable, and she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. That feeling was short-lived. When she finally gathered the courage to check her email that evening, she discovered something that made her blood run cold, a message from her bank alerting her to unusual activity on her account. Someone had attempted to transfer a large sum to an account she didn't recognize. With trembling fingers, Eleanor called the bank's fraud department. After answering security questions and explaining the situation, she learned that Michael had attempted to transfer $50,000 from her savings account that morning. "But how is that possible?" she asked, panic rising. "He's not on my accounts." "According to our records, Mrs. Richards, you granted him power of attorney 6 months ago," the representative explained. "We flagged the transaction because it was unusual, not because he lacked authorization." Eleanor felt as though the floor had dropped out from under her. 6 months ago, she'd been recovering from pneumonia. Michael had brought her papers to sign, insurance forms, he'd said, and medication authorizations. She'd signed without reading them carefully, trusting her son implicitly. "I want all authorizations revoked immediately," she said firmly, "and I need to come in to change all my accounts." Sleep eluded her that night. The betrayal had gone beyond pushing her out of the house. This had been calculated, methodical, a systematic erasure. How long had they been planning this? What else had she signed away without realizing? The next morning brought another shock. When Eleanor tried to access her email again, her password had been changed. Her attempts to recover the account failed. Because the recovery phone number had been changed too, to Michael's number. With Susan's help, she spent the morning creating new accounts, changing passwords on whatever services she could still access, and visiting the bank in person to secure her finances. The bank manager looked uncomfortable as Eleanor explained the situation. "Mrs. Richards, I should inform you that your son came in yesterday with power of attorney documents, requesting information about your mortgage on the downtown property." A cold wave of fear washed over her. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing yet. We told him we needed to review the documents first." "That power of attorney is revoked as of today," Eleanor said firmly, handing over the paperwork she'd completed. "And I need to know, is there a problem with my mortgage?" The manager tapped at his keyboard. "Not from our perspective. Your payments are current, however." He frowned at the screen. "There appears to be some question about the title. A flag was placed on the account yesterday." By the time Eleanor left the bank, she had a clearer picture of what she was facing. Michael had not only tried to access her savings, but was apparently contesting her ownership of the downtown apartment, her only remaining asset and shelter. Outside the bank, Eleanor leaned against a wall, momentarily overwhelmed. A text message chimed on her phone. Marge, checking in. Eleanor quickly typed back, "I'm okay, staying at my downtown place, handling some unexpected complications." Marge's response came immediately. "Michael came by looking for you. Said there was a misunderstanding about some important papers you need to sign. Seemed worried." Eleanor didn't respond. She couldn't risk Marge inadvertently revealing her whereabouts, not until she understood the full extent of what Michael was trying to do. Back at the apartment, Eleanor methodically unpacked the boxes from her car, organizing her remaining possessions in the small space. Among the items was a photo album she thought had been lost, pictures of Michael growing up, of Robert, of their life together as a family. She sat on the floor, turning pages slowly, searching the smiling faces for clues. When had things changed? What had she missed? The last photo in the album showed the 4 of them, Eleanor, Michael, Diane, and newborn twins in the hospital. Everyone looked exhausted but happy. Eleanor traced the outline of the babies' faces with her finger. Would she ever see them again? As if in answer to her unspoken question, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Grandma," Emma's small voice came through the speaker. "I'm using my friend Lily's mum's phone. Dad took my tablet away because I texted you." Eleanor's heart constricted. "Emma, sweetheart, are you okay? Dad said you decided to live somewhere else because you didn't want to be with us anymore." Emma's voice wavered. "But that's not true, is it?" Eleanor chose her words carefully. "I would never choose to be away from you and Ethan. I love you both very much. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated disagreements, but none of this is your fault. Can we come see your new house?" "I hope so very soon," Eleanor said, knowing it might be a promise she couldn't keep. "I just need to talk to your dad and mum first." After saying goodbye, Eleanor sat motionless, the phone still clutched in her hand. Emma's call had crystallized something she'd been trying to avoid acknowledging. This wasn't just about her anymore. Her grandchildren were being fed a narrative that painted her as the villain, the abandoner. They were collateral damage in whatever game Michael and Diane were playing. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw Michael standing in the hallway, his expression a carefully constructed mask of concern. Eleanor didn't open the door. Instead, she called through it. "Whatever you're planning, Michael, it won't work. I've revoked the power of attorney. I know what you tried to do at the bank." "Mom, please," he said, his voice muffled by the door. "This is all a misunderstanding. Let me explain." "I think you've explained enough with your actions," Eleanor replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I trusted you, and you betrayed that trust. Please leave, or I'll call building security." After Michael's unwelcome visit, Eleanor installed a security chain and peephole camera on her apartment door. The small device, recommended by the building manager, would alert her phone whenever someone approached. It felt strange, taking security measures against her own son, but necessary. "You're doing what you need to do," Susan reassured her over coffee the following week. "Self-preservation isn't selfish, it's essential." October unfolded with unexpected momentum. The legal aid attorney confirmed Eleanor's worst fears. Michael had indeed attempted to claim power of attorney based on documents she'd signed while ill. Additionally, he was contesting her ownership of the downtown apartment, claiming it had been purchased with joint family funds intended for the twins' college education. "It's completely false," Eleanor told the attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Valerie Jenkins. "I bought this place with my retirement savings and a small inheritance from my sister. Michael didn't contribute a penny." "Do you have documentation? Bank statements, the original purchase agreement?" Eleanor nodded. "In a safe deposit box. Michael doesn't have access to that, at least." Valerie's strategy was aggressive but necessary. File a countersuit for illegal eviction from the family home, challenge the fraudulent power of attorney, and secure a restraining order to prevent further financial intrusions. When Eleanor hesitated at the last measure, Valerie was blunt. "Mrs. Richards, this isn't a simple family disagreement. This is elder abuse, financial and emotional. The restraining order protects your assets while we sort this out." The words elder abuse struck Eleanor like a physical blow. Was that what this was? She was only 67, hardly decrepit, but as Valerie outlined the pattern, isolation from grandchildren, financial manipulation, eviction from her home, the term began to fit with uncomfortable precision. Outside the legal battles, Eleanor's daily life took on new rhythms. Susan introduced her to the downtown senior center, where Eleanor initially went for the free lunches and legal resources, but stayed for the community. The center hummed with activity: art classes, book discussions, technology workshops, and advocacy planning. "We're not the invisible generation," declared Marianne, the center's 75-year-old director, during Eleanor's first week. "We're the backbone generation, and it's time society remembered that." Eleanor found herself volunteering at the center's computer lab, helping other seniors navigate email, social media, and video calls with distant family. Teaching again, even informally, rekindled something she'd thought was lost. By early November, word of Eleanor's situation had spread through the center's network. She discovered she wasn't alone. Others had experienced similar betrayals by adult children, though few as sudden or complete as hers. A support group formed organically, meeting weekly in the center's back room. "I haven't seen my grandchildren in 3 years," shared Gloria, a retired nurse. "My daughter-in-law decided I was a negative influence after I questioned their anti-vaccination stance. My son borrowed against my house without telling me," added Thomas, a former accountant. "By the time I discovered it, I was underwater on the mortgage." Each story reinforced what Valerie had told her. This wasn't just a personal tragedy, but a pattern, a societal problem hiding in plain sight. Eleanor's apartment slowly transformed from an emergency shelter to a home. A local church donated a small sofa. The thrift store yielded bookshelves, lamps, and kitchen essentials at prices she could afford. Susan's brother, a retired carpenter, built custom storage solutions for the compact space. The legal proceedings moved at a glacial pace, but small victories emerged. The restraining order was granted, preventing Michael from accessing any of Eleanor's financial accounts. The title company confirmed her sole ownership of the downtown apartment, dismissing Michael's claims about college funds. On a crisp November morning, Eleanor received an unexpected visitor, Diane's younger sister, Catherine, whom she'd always liked but never known well. "I can't stay long," Catherine said, glancing nervously down the hallway as Eleanor invited her in. "Diane doesn't know I'm here." Catherine's revelation was both startling and sadly predictable. The plan to move Diane's parents into the house had been in motion for nearly a year. Michael and Diane had systematically prepared by gradually moving Eleanor's possessions to the attic and garage, taking control of her finances, and isolating her from the twins. "They told everyone you were becoming forgetful, possibly showing early signs of dementia," Catherine explained. "Even the kids' teachers. That's why no one questioned when they suddenly said you'd chosen to move out." "But that's absurd," Eleanor protested. "I was teaching ESL classes at the community college until last spring. I've never had cognitive issues." Catherine nodded. "I know. That's why I'm here." It didn't add up, especially when Diane started rehearsing the twins on what to say if anyone asked about you. She reached into her purse and withdrew a small wrapped package. "Emma made this for you. She asked me to find a way to get it to you." Inside was a handmade bracelet of colored beads and a crayon drawing of Eleanor with Emma and Ethan standing in front of what appeared to be Eleanor's new apartment building. Across the top, in a child's careful printing, "We miss you, Grandma." After Catherine left, Eleanor sat with the drawing for a long time, tracing the stick figures with her finger. How had Emma known what her building looked like? Had she been searching for her grandmother on her own? That afternoon, Eleanor made a decision that surprised even herself. She called the local elementary school and requested a meeting with the twins' principal. If Michael and Diane were spreading falsehoods about her mental competence to the school, she needed to counter that narrative directly. Principal Sharma received her with professional courtesy that Friday afternoon. "Mrs. Richards, I appreciate you reaching out. We've been told you were experiencing some health challenges." "That's a polite way of saying my son told you I have dementia," Eleanor replied calmly, placing a folder on the desk. "These are my medical records from my annual physical 3 months ago, showing no cognitive impairments. This is a letter from the community college where I taught until recently, and this is documentation of the legal proceedings currently underway regarding my unlawful eviction from my home." By the end of the meeting, Principal Sharma's expression had shifted from diplomatic neutrality to genuine concern. "I had no idea the situation was so complex. Our priority is the children's well-being, of course." "As is mine," Eleanor assured her. "I'm not asking you to take sides. I simply want to ensure that Emma and Ethan know their grandmother hasn't abandoned them and that I'm permitted the standard grandparent communications the school offers. Copies of report cards, invitations to school events, that sort of thing." Principal Sharma nodded thoughtfully. "Unless there's a court order preventing contact, which you've confirmed there isn't, you have the same rights as any grandparent in our district." It was a small victory, but meaningful. Eleanor left the school with a calendar of upcoming events and the knowledge that her presence in the twins' lives couldn't be entirely erased by Michael and Diane's machinations. That evening, she received a text from an unknown number. "This is Catherine. Thought you should know that Michael and Diane are furious about your school visit. They're talking about moving to Cincinnati for Diane's job. Might just be talk, but wanted to warn you." The threat of having the twins moved across the country sent Eleanor into a panic spiral. She called Valerie immediately, who advised caution. "Don't react publicly, that's what they want. To provoke you into looking unstable. We'll adjust our legal strategy to address potential relocation. But remember, courts don't look favorably on parents who move children to prevent relationships with loving grandparents." The following Tuesday, Eleanor arrived at the senior center to find unusual activity. A local news crew setting up equipment in the main room. Marianne waved her over excitedly. "They're doing a segment on senior advocacy and independence," she explained. "I mentioned your situation, no names, of course, and they're very interested. Would you consider being interviewed?" Eleanor's instinct was to decline. She'd always been private, avoiding conflict and publicity, but something had shifted inside her over the past weeks. Her silence had allowed Michael's narrative to prevail. Perhaps it was time to speak her truth. "What exactly would this involve?" she asked cautiously. 2 days later, Eleanor found herself sitting across from Christine Wu, a respected reporter known for her investigations into social issues. The camera lights were intimidating, but Christine's approach was gentle. "We're seeing a disturbing pattern across the country," Christine explained off-camera. "Seniors displaced from their homes, often by family members, with little recourse or public awareness. Your story puts a face to the statistics." The interview lasted 40 minutes, with Eleanor carefully avoiding specific accusations against Michael while clearly outlining the broader issue. She spoke about the senior center's support network, the legal challenges facing elderly victims of financial abuse, and the emotional toll of family estrangement. "What would you want other seniors in your situation to know?" Christine asked as they concluded. Eleanor considered the question carefully. "That your value doesn't diminish with age, that you deserve dignity and respect, and that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, even when, especially when, the people you thought would protect you are the ones causing harm." The segment aired the following week. Eleanor watched it alone in her apartment, heart pounding as her story, one among several, unfolded on screen. The producers had handled it sensitively, focusing on the systemic issues rather than family drama. Still, anyone who knew her would recognize her situation immediately. Her phone began ringing almost as soon as the segment ended. Susan, Marianne, former colleagues from the school district, even Marge, whose message simply said, "I had no idea. I'm so sorry." The news segment changed everything. Within days, Eleanor's story sparked a local movement, then a regional one. Her phone rang constantly with calls from other seniors sharing similar experiences, reporters seeking follow-up interviews, and even lawmakers interested in strengthening elder protection laws. The Senior Center established a dedicated hotline, staffed by volunteers like Eleanor, to help others navigate the complex intersection of family dynamics, legal rights, and emotional healing. What had begun as one woman's private tragedy was evolving into a catalyst for systemic change. Not all the attention was positive. Michael issued a statement through a hastily hired attorney, claiming Eleanor had cognitive issues that made her an unreliable narrator. Several of Diane's friends posted social media comments questioning Eleanor's motives and mental stability. But the tide of public opinion had turned decisively in Eleanor's favor. Former students wrote letters to the editor, defending her character and intelligence. Colleagues from the school district organized a fundraiser to help with her legal expenses. Even Michael's childhood friend, now a respected doctor, publicly contradicted the dementia claims. "I evaluated Mrs. Richards 6 months ago," Dr. James Chen told a follow-up interviewer. "She showed no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever. This characterization of her is not just inaccurate, it's harmful and perpetuates dangerous stereotypes about aging." As Christmas approached, Eleanor's apartment transformed from a sparse refuge to a warm, personalized home. Students from her ESL classes brought handmade decorations. The senior center's craft group created a colorful quilt for her bed. Susan and her husband invited her to join their family celebrations. Yet despite these blessings, Eleanor felt the twins' absence like a physical ache. She had sent carefully chosen gifts through Catherine, books for Emma, who loved stories, a beginner's science kit for Ethan, who was fascinated by experiments. But she had no way of knowing if they would receive them or if they would understand they were from her. The week before Christmas, a court date was finally set for January to address the illegality of her eviction and Michael's attempts to access her finances. Valerie was cautiously optimistic. "The judge assigned to your case has a strong record on elder rights," she told Eleanor, "and the publicity, while uncomfortable, has actually strengthened our position. It's harder for them to dismiss you as confused when you're leading community workshops and giving articulate interviews." 2 days before Christmas, Eleanor's security. Camera pinged with an alert. Looking at her phone, she saw Diane standing at her door, the twins beside her. Eleanor froze. Was this a trap? A genuine olive branch? Something in between? Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. Diane looked thinner, more strained than Eleanor remembered. The twins, initially hiding behind their mother, broke into smiles when they saw their grandmother. "Can we talk?" Diane asked, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "Just for a few minutes." Eleanor ushered them inside, heart racing. Emma immediately ran to hug her, while Ethan approached more cautiously, eyeing the apartment with curiosity. "Your place is small, Grandma," he observed. "But cool. I like the big windows." "Thank you for the science kit," he added after a moment. "Mom said it was from you." Eleanor glanced at Diane, surprised. "You're welcome, sweetheart. Have you tried any experiments yet?" While the twins explored the apartment, Diane spoke in hushed tones. "I know you have no reason to trust me right now. What happened was wrong. I want you to know that Michael and I are separating." The revelation stunned Eleanor. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said carefully, uncertain whether this was genuine or another manipulation. "Don't be," Diane replied flatly. "It's been coming for a long time. The situation with you just made everything clearer." She twisted her wedding ring nervously. "Michael's financial decisions have put us in a difficult position. When my parents moved in, things got worse. They're controlling, judgmental. The environment became toxic for everyone, especially the kids." Eleanor remained silent, waiting. "I've taken a teaching position at Westridge Elementary starting next semester," Diane continued. "We'll be living in the district apartment complex temporarily. My parents are staying in the house with Michael." "And the plans to move to Cincinnati?" Diane looked startled. "There were never any real plans. Michael threatened that to upset you." The conversation that followed was halting, uncomfortable, but necessary. Diane admitted to believing Michael's claims about Eleanor's mental decline at first, then gradually recognizing the deception. She confessed to intercepting messages between Eleanor and the twins, though insisted she'd given them the Christmas gifts. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Diane said finally. "But the twins need their grandmother. Would you be willing to see them regularly? Maybe even help with after-school care sometimes when I start teaching?" The request was so unexpected that Eleanor could barely process it. After months of being painted as incompetent and unwanted, she was suddenly being asked to step back into her grandchildren's lives in a significant way. "I would need to think about it," she said carefully. "And there would have to be clear boundaries, written agreements." Diane nodded. "I understand. I expected nothing less." After they left, Eleanor sat in stunned silence, trying to make sense of this new development. Was this genuine remorse and growth from Diane, or another layer of manipulation? The twins' joy at seeing her seemed genuine, but children could be coached. She called Susan, then Valerie, describing the encounter and seeking perspective. Both advised caution mixed with tentative optimism. "Document everything," Valerie emphasized, "and don't agree to anything formal until after our court date." The new year arrived with a whirlwind of activity. The court hearing went even better than expected. The judge was scathing in his assessment of Michael's actions, ordering immediate financial restitution and formally invalidating the fraudulent power of attorney documents. Most significantly, the judge granted Eleanor partial ownership rights to the family home, acknowledging her decades of mortgage payments and upkeep. "You could force a sale if you wanted to," Valerie explained afterward. "Make them buy you out or move." Eleanor considered this power thoughtfully. It would be justice, certainly, perhaps even satisfaction. But as January progressed, with carefully supervised visits with the twins becoming a highlight of her week, she began to consider a different approach. On a snowy afternoon in late January, Eleanor invited Diane for coffee at a neutral location, the cafe where she'd reconnected with Susan months earlier. "I've been thinking about the house situation," Eleanor began once they were settled. "I have a proposal." Her plan was straightforward. She would transfer her ownership share of the family home to a trust for Emma and Ethan's education, with Diane as co-trustee. In exchange, Michael and his in-laws would vacate the property, allowing Diane and the twins to return if they chose, or to sell it and use the proceeds for a fresh start. "Why would you do this?" Diane asked, clearly shocked, "after everything that happened?" "Not for Michael," Eleanor clarified firmly. "Not for you either, though I believe you're trying to make amends. For Emma and Ethan, they deserve stability and a future." The legal process took weeks to finalize, but by early spring the arrangement was complete. Michael, facing financial pressures and public criticism, agreed to the terms rather than risk further court battles. Diane and the twins moved back into the family home, while Michael's in-laws returned to Arizona. Eleanor remained in her downtown apartment, which no longer felt like a consolation prize, but a conscious choice. The Senior Center's advocacy program had grown into a formal non-profit, with Eleanor serving on the board. Her ESL teaching expanded to include a special program for senior immigrants, combining language learning with community integration. On the anniversary of the day, she'd found her belongings in the garden. Eleanor hosted a gathering at her apartment. Susan and her husband Marianne from the center, Valerie, Catherine, and most precious of all, Emma and Ethan filled the small space with laughter and conversation. While the twins played a board game with Susan's grandchildren in the living room, Eleanor stepped onto her small balcony for a moment of quiet reflection. The downtown lights twinkled below, so different from the suburban view she'd known for decades. Catherine joined her, leaning against the railing. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Eleanor smiled. "I was just thinking about paths not chosen. If Michael and Diane hadn't put my things in the garden that day, I might still be living in that back bedroom, making myself smaller each day, watching life happen around me instead of living it myself." "Do you forgive them?" Catherine asked, quietly. Eleanor considered the question carefully. "Forgiveness implies the story is finished. I think ours is still being written." She watched Emma through the window, showing her younger cousin how to play the game with exaggerated patience. "I'm learning to accept what happened without letting it define me. That feels more important than forgiveness right now." Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, Eleanor sat with a cup of tea, scrolling through photos of the gathering on her new tablet. One image caught her attention, a candid shot of herself laughing with Ethan, her face animated, eyes bright with genuine joy. She barely recognized herself. The betrayal that had seemed like an ending had become, improbably, a beginning. Not just for her, but for the hundreds of seniors who now contacted the center's hotline each month, seeking the guidance and community Eleanor had helped create. Her phone chimed with a text from Emma. "Thank you for my party, Grandma. Can I come over Thursday after school to finish our puzzle?" Eleanor smiled as she typed her reply. "Absolutely. I'll have cookies waiting." She added the photo of herself and Ethan to the digital frame Susan had given her for Christmas. It joined other new memories: Eleanor receiving a community service award, teaching a class of senior ESL students, standing proudly beside Valerie at the courthouse. The frame cycled to a much older photo she'd digitized: Eleanor, Robert, and baby Michael, on the porch of the family home, faces young and full of hope. Eleanor didn't flinch at the image. It was part of her story, just as the Garden of Betrayal was, but neither defined her now. As she prepared for bed, Eleanor reflected on the strange mathematics of loss and gain. She had lost a house but found a home, lost a son but deepened her connection with her grandchildren, lost her illusions about family obligation but gained clarity about her own worth. The next morning, she would lead a workshop for seniors on financial independence. The following week, she would help Emma with her science project. The month after, she would testify before state legislators about strengthening elder protection laws. This wasn't the life she had planned. It was better, harder in some ways, richer in others, and entirely her own. Dear listeners, we hope Eleanor's journey from betrayal to empowerment has touched your hearts. For more inspiring stories of resilience and renewal, we've created a special playlist featuring characters who, like Eleanor, find unexpected strength in life's most challenging moments. You'll find it by clicking on the left side of your screen. If Eleanor's transformation moved you, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day, we bring you unique stories that explore the complexity of human relationships and the power of second beginnings. Don't miss our upcoming content that celebrates the courage it takes to start again, regardless of age. We're eager to hear your thoughts in the comments below.